Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Social World podcast. I'm actually today going to start what I hope is an excellent series of podcasts looking at a region of the world, looking at issues to do with trafficking, survivors, support, victims, etc., in the Caribbean. And I couldn't start with a better guest than Amanda Ackbarali, who is the director of the Opening Lotus, and that's based in Trinidad and Tobago. Amanda, welcome to the program.
Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on.
No,
And a warm hello to all of the listeners from sunny Trinidad and Tobago.
yeah, I could never normally say back to you that, but here in the UK, it's about 28 degrees.
Ah, good for you.
I know, it's just very weird. So,
Well,
anyway.
embrace it. Embrace it for however long it lasts.
Okay, listen, let's start. Could you tell us a little bit about the Opening Lotus?
Oh, sure. But I'm gonna cheat. And Dave, just before I talk about the Opening Lotus, I have to tell you, congratulations on the prolific work that you've done over the years, in the field of social work, and also with the podcasting. It's
Oh,
been really, really inspiring to me. So congratulations.
well, thank you. I am
Um,
flattered, but I'm also embarrassed a little bit. Okay. Thank you.
so
Thank you.
you're most welcome. I want to tell you that the Opening Lotus was born in November of 2018. And it came about just as I had left the work I was doing at a child protection agency in Trinidad and Tobago. And it came after some years there where I was feeling like there was a gap, and I wanted to form an organization that would be able to fill it, which would really bring a lot of heart and groundedness to serving persons with mental health challenges
Hmm.
and persons who were in need of psychosocial support, and doing it in a way that would fit in with the culture in Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean region.
Yeah.
Um, and having said that, I would say, some people would say that their work is their baby. Dave, I would say that the work of the Opening Lotus is really all of my heart, getting a platform to really serve other people.
Well, you're a kindred spirit. So let's now think about not just what the Opening Lotus does, but a little bit I'd like people to hear about how you got there. What sort of, I mean, because I've got everything in front of me here, and it sort of reads like a hugely impressive kind of CV. But I've got, I'd like you to tell people what your journey was to the Opening Lotus, all the different things you might have been involved with. Just give us a sense of it, would you?
Sure. And in preparing to have this talk with you, it's like a trip down memory lane. Yeah, because practitioners like us, and you would know this, Dave, in psychology and social work and so on, sometimes we get so entrenched in the work that the bigger picture kind of eludes us a little bit. Um,
Hmm.
my journey started off teaching. Yeah. So I
Okay.
started off with teaching at a school that kind of specialized in dealing with the kids who needed to repeat their exams. In
Yeah.
Trinidad and Tobago, we call them the repeaters, right? So we have the CSEC body of exams for like teenagers that are around 15 to 16, 17 years old, and for the kids who didn't do well and needed to repeat the exams, programs. That's the secondary school that they would go to in the East-West corridor of Trinidad and Tobago. And I was fortunate to be able to teach there for a number of years, and it gave me such a rich experience
Good.
because many times there were older kids who were repeating for the second and the third time. Sometimes there were guys and their chest is kind of hairy, but they're in a uniform and they have to conform to the rules, and I have to find a way to make them learn. So I taught English and literature and what we call social studies and so on. And that was where my career first started, and I loved it. I loved the classroom. But
Mm,
while I was doing that, I was doing my degree in psychology. And eventually I moved over into the mental health counseling practice. And I remember that my family was aghast because I was taking a huge pay cut when
yeah.
I left teaching to go and
Yeah.
work for an NGO. So I went over to a rape crisis center in Trinidad and Tobago, and Dave, that was the best career move that I could have ever made at that point in time.
Interesting. Mm.
Yeah, even though there was a huge pay cut, because we know the challenges that NGOs have, um, I went into an organization where I got so much training opportunity and so much clinical supervision. And we know the importance of those two things when you're starting off in a
Oh,
career in the mental health and social work field.
you
So
got to
it
have
was a
support. You got to have good support.
That's it. That's it. And that's the backbone of the Opening Lotus, just believing that everybody needs to have that kind of support, not only the clients, the people who need help, but also the helpers, right?
Mm.
So in my work at the Rape Crisis Society of Trinidad and Tobago, I was able to work with clients who were survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, rape, domestic violence. I got to work with children. I got to train many hotline listeners. That was something that I did over and over, many batches, year after year. Really enjoyed that, and also worked rape hotlines myself. Um,
Because
so
you did a master's in mediation studies, didn't you? And
yes,
you
yes.
became a certified family mediator with a focus on victim offenders.
Yes, that's right. While I was working at the Rape Crisis Center, I pursued my master's degree in mediation studies at the
Mm.
University of the West Indies. And my thesis was on victim offender mediation for cases of acquaintance rape. Quite a controversial topic. It took me a good while for the board to approve the topic in the first place, as a topic of research. But really, I knew that that's a method that has been working in other countries for many years with all of the proper safeguards, and it really piqued my interest. Um, Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of the landscape of restorative justice, is still very much developing. And recently, I was able to get the opportunity to make contributions to that development. But just to go right back,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
I think overall, I would say, Dave, that I have been so fortunate and so blessed to be able to touch on so many areas in my career. I mean, I started off in the education field, and then I was able to work for an NGO for a number of years, the Rape Crisis Society, and some associated domestic violence shelters that they were connected with. And then
Hmm.
I was able to move on in 2015 to government, where in 2015, the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, that's the child
Ah,
protection
yes.
agency, had opened its doors officially as the legislation was finally passed. And I was able to join that organization at that time when it was starting.
Now,
And
you
it
played a
was
key
a
role I've got here in creating the Child and Family Services Unit and also creating, I've got down here, protocols for interviewing child trafficking victims. That's a huge area of work.
Yeah, it's as I said, I feel very fortunate, Dave, to
Oh,
have been allowed the opportunity to contribute in that way and to have key mentors in my life who were able to provide that guidance, and also to my family who always supported me along the way so that I can be able to do this work. And you know that, Dave,
So
that
helpful.
as
Hmm.
practitioners, helpers, if our families and our spouses are not on board, then it becomes more difficult to do the work. So yes, I was the manager of the Child and Family Services Unit of the Children's Authority in its startup phase, and I was privileged to be able to work along with some really great people,
Hmm.
um, and some great families who we served.
Okay.
Not too long after leaving there, I was able to start the Opening Lotus, which is still running up to this day. This year, I will mark 7 years of the Opening Lotus in operation. But also in 2019, that's just as the pandemic was setting in,
Oh yeah.
I was able to join an international organization, the United Nations Development Program.
Yeah.
And since 2019 to present, I have been able to work with many vulnerable populations under projects of the UNDP. So that's why I say, Dave, I feel really privileged that I've been able to touch on so many different areas in my
Ah,
career.
I know. Well, look, I mean, I know that you're, a very intelligent woman, so I'm not going to kind of ask you a question about what's wrong in the Caribbean at the moment in terms of what's needed, but you must have quite a good sense of what the challenges are, but also what the successes have been with some of the different areas that you've been involved with. I mean, do you want to sort of say a little bit about the wider picture in the Caribbean? Do you get much of a chance to get involved in that?
Sure, sure. So through the work that I've done with the Rape Crisis Society, the Children's Authority of
Hmm.
Trinidad and Tobago, and with the UNDP, I've gotten the opportunity to work with some really good people in different countries in the Caribbean. And I can say that there is a lot of development happening. All
Good.
right, we know
Okay.
that some of the key issues are around sexual and gender-based violence. We know
Mhm.
that there are strong issues related to climate change and how those intersect with gender issues and bringing in the youth involvement.
Oh, it's interesting
But
that
I,
is. Hmm.
yeah, there are a lot of very key intersections happening, and even with human trafficking as well. Um, but Dave, I want to say that even though there's a lot of development happening, there's a lot of international organizations present in different countries, beginning initiatives. Some of
Hmm.
them have been ongoing for years
Hmm.
and have sustainable funding. I have seen with our lens, right? Because in this field of the psychosocial work, it comes with a particular lens, and once you have it, you can't not see things a particular way, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
both a curse and a blessing. We know that, right, Dave?
I
Um,
do.
I have to say that while there's a lot of development happening, there is still a lot of room for a greater culture of collaboration to emerge amongst the helpers, amongst the professionals. So let
Yeah.
me tell you, for example, in the mental health field, we know that there's a kind of hierarchy of helping and professional qualification. So you will have the psychiatrists, the range of different types of psychologists, and you have the social workers, the counselors, and so on. And the thing really struck me some years ago when an international body for suicide prevention had its annual symposium right here in Trinidad and Tobago. I attended, and one of the keynote speakers was saying that in order for initiatives to really be effective, those at the top tier of qualifications have to talk as frequently as possible with the community gatekeepers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, then programs can almost never be effective. And I sat there and I wanted to jump up and scream, well, amen. Yeah, because so many
Yeah.
times
Yeah.
in my work, I had seen my fellow colleagues of different, what we say, multidisciplinary backgrounds, right?
Mm.
Wanting to contribute and wanting to say in their own words what is their own experience with particular cases. But there's sort of this invisible, what can I say, tension, this unspoken way of things sometimes
Mm.
amongst us as professionals that doesn't allow for that open, flowing, just say it how you have experienced it, whether you use the technological jargon or not. Just say the thing as you are experiencing it. And
Okay.
that is going to help everybody in the case conference or the symposium or whatever is the way that people are gathering to talk about the urgent issues, to just say it and to listen with a spirit of collaboration.
So if
So I,
sorry,
it's
had you
okay.
finished? Sorry. I was just going to say, so as I understand it, just to be clear, because it does sound like you're making an excellent point. In the past, the different professions, and this is in the UK and the various places that I got involvement with when in my early days, you used to be quite singular in terms of being in the profession. And nowadays, it's quite rightly turned to multi-agency teams, different disciplines mixing with each other, bringing the best assessment to each person's needs.
Hmm.
I don't imagine. We never really thought of it this much. But what you're saying effectively is looking at the, if you like, the particular disciplines involved in mental health issues, if you like, as a sort of vertical issue rather than a horizontal one. I mean,
Hmm.
they need to do the same because essentially the people who are in the community working, they're working right directly with the source material that the others need. And so
Exactly.
effectively, it makes not only good sense, but it makes stupidity out of people who believe in false hierarchy.
Hmm.
Is that
Hmm.
a fair assessment of what you were saying?
I think so. You know it's spot on because maybe you've seen it in different ways through the work that you've been doing and the work that you've
Mm,
been leading in different organizations. Um, yeah, because it's the people who are on the ground who would be able to tell you, well, here's what's happening. In
mm,
this cluster of communities in the country, there's been an upsurge in X, and maybe that's why this is happening. And if you're in an office writing policy, for 3 months, then you're not going to know that this is what's happening on the ground. So all in all, Dave, I would say that the opening Lotus was born out of that understanding, seeing it before my very eyes, and wanting to do something to change that. And in the work that I do, Dave, I
mm,
try to
mm.
pull in so many of the professionals in Trinidad and Tobago,
Yeah.
multidisciplinary, to have a voice, to say what they're doing. And when I see my colleagues online, I uplift them and I share their work because that's the spirit of collaboration that we have to be driving in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, where there are a lot of social issues, right, Dave? And in other countries in the Caribbean as well, there are many social issues that we really have to start hitting the nail on the head to fix. Um,
Well, no,
if I
I
could,
mean,
if I,
in this group of podcasts that I'm going to hopefully do, and that you very kindly have agreed to be the vanguard and actually kind of kick the whole thing off, I will obviously be putting to any other people I talk to in different parts of the Caribbean about their experiences of the very issues that you're bringing up. And I think that kind of thing, provoking kind of thinking in that is an excellent way forward because hey, it is changing a bit, isn't it, Amanda? I mean, isn't it? It's getting a little bit better in the cooperation.
Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly. There are definitely signs of persons being aware of what I'm talking about, the gaps, and
Hmm.
trying to find ways to address them. If I could tell you a quick story,
Yeah,
I
go
hope it's
ahead.
okay
Yeah.
to tell stories on your podcast. We're big
Oh,
on
we're always good for
storytelling over
stories,
here.
don't we? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think it was back in 2020. I had encountered in the Opening Lotus a young woman who had come for counseling, but she was hearing impaired.
mm,
So I had to follow some different protocols and have a translator and interpreter available in the sessions, and of course, all of the safeguarding that comes along with that. But then the person would have disclosed being a survivor of sexual violence and wanting to make a report to the police, and not feeling that she knew how to go about it or that she would really be heard. Um, and
mm,
that's how, with the Opening Lotus, we try to do things a little bit different. So I would have connected with the Trinidad and Tobago Institute for the Hearing Impaired, and I would have, of course, anonymously let them know what was happening. And we got together. They sent their own interpreter and a social worker whose specialty is dealing with the hearing impaired. And we all got together in a car and we drove to the police station, and we facilitated her making the report as a multidisciplinary team.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah,
Good
and
stuff.
Dave, that's the kind of spirit of things that I want to have a voice for and really drive that this is how we need to be doing social work and mental health interventions in Trinidad and
Mm.
Tobago.
So the opening lotus essentially is coming across to me, or maybe just the opening lotus in this case is you, but in terms of being a professional connector, if you like, as you mentioned, for all the different disciplines, but day to day, do you get much help with the opening lotus, or is it something that mainly you drive?
Well, I have been very fortunate that whenever I call colleagues for help, everybody says yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody says yes. So I can tell you a story again, Dave. A couple of years ago, the Opening Lotus began some work in a correctional facility in Trinidad and Tobago, where they reached out and they said, listen, we have some issues that are kind of dire, and we really need some trauma-informed help.
Mhm.
Um, and I said, okay, I need to rally together a really special and trauma focused team to go in there to the facility to do the work. And that included myself, a social worker, a trauma informed counselor, and a forensic psychologist. Yeah.
Right.
And
That
everybody,
sounds like the
everybody
beginning
said
of
yes.
a big story we've got. Right. Okay, good.
Yeah, and we went in and we started the work. We, talked with the officers first, with the senior management, and then the work began with the actual residents of the facility. And it's been going on for a couple of years, and it's very, very fulfilling work. It has taken some interesting turns where the residents have identified other people within the facility who can benefit from help, and we were able to get funding from an NGO to be able to continue that work again as a multidisciplinary team.
Right. So,
Yeah,
well, I mean, what a nice, I say a nice story. I mean, obviously it had a very serious purpose, but I mean, it's so good to hear actually agencies working together and actually not competing in any way. I
that's
think
it.
that's very
Fostering
important.
fostering that sense of respect
Yeah.
um, for each other in the team, that everybody has their particular role and their expertise that they're going to bring. Um, and I think generally for the landscape of developing countries that when funding is a challenge, that affects people, right? Especially
Mm,
helpers,
mm,
because people get into the field of professional helping, whether you're a psychiatrist, whether you are a community-based social worker, because you want to help people. And when the organizations that you work for um, do not receive the requisite amount of funding to be able to keep things properly afloat, it gets frustrating. And I understand that that can manifest in different ways. So if you hear that one organization has gotten how much of millions of dollars for the year, and then the organization you work for doesn't even have a printer or air conditioning, that's
mm.
going to impact the way that you do your work, or it can impact the way you work and the way you interact with other helpers.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
s-
yeah.
yeah, so it's so much to be considered,
No,
and
no,
I,
no.
I
I
know.
remember we talked about this before because when I first met you, if it, as it were, you were involved with a large agency that had sort of quite a lot of your time and effort invested in it, but you had to move on because its funding got removed. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, yeah, that happened earlier this year, and
Mm,
it wasn't only the project I was on. I know there have been huge shifts globally in
mm,
terms of funding particular humanitarian projects and so on. And I think that having some months to really process things,
mm,
um, it's about it's about trying to see what alternative channels of funding there might be, but
mm,
also just thinking, well, how can I help the work to continue in my own way? And all of the key stakeholders that I had been involved in through the particular human trafficking prevention project that I was the coordinator
mm.
for, um, I have tried my best to keep in touch with them and to direct resources to them in some way or another. It may not be financial, but it might be connecting, networking, sharing particular tools, sharing opportunities for training that I might come about on LinkedIn or
Yeah.
so, and just really making people feel supported and keeping that connection with them because that has immense value. It may not be financial, but it carries value as well.
Oh, you're not far off there. I mean, I totally agree with what you've been saying. But listen, you know how I've got a particular interest at the moment in kind of scoping tra issues to do with trafficking, and that, as you said, you had a kind of an important position for quite some time with an initiative that focused on reducing trafficking and with training and other programs and capacity building that you've just described. Can you give a quick assessment of that problem in the area as far as you're aware, in terms of is it increasing? Is it reducing? Are we getting better help for survivors? I mean, what's your assessment?
I would say so. I would say yes to everything you've just said, Dave. Yes, it's a problem, and it has been a growing problem, especially for Trinidad and Tobago, simply because of our geographical location.
Mm,
Um, And I would say yes, the interventions have been improving. There have been several international organizations that have been doing work over the past years
mm,
to increase support available to survivors, but also to increase support to the key agencies that are in place to render that support, to do the tracking, the finding, the bringing the cases to court, the prosecutions, and so on. So
mm.
it's an area that has received quite a bit of development over the past few years, but we all know the nature of human trafficking. It is
Ah,
big business.
and organized
It's
crime are very clever in kind of shifting the goalposts, as it were, all the time, and being kind of excellent at kind of hiding all sorts
That's
of issues.
right.
It takes,
That's
I know
right.
it takes a huge amount of effort, but can I just ask you one question before we move on to another subject? But On terms of the survivors, because I know you've done quite a lot of work there, I've come across a lot of situations around where you get survivors of abuse. So whether it's toward trafficking or whether it's familial based or whether it's strangers or whatever, but survivors of abuse, there's no such thing as a generic survivor, which makes it so difficult to sort of target resources in many cases. And lots of survivors groups disagree with each other about the best way for them to be helped or for them to be offered support. Did you find that as well?
Well, I think that's the crux of it all in this line of work, recognizing that there's no set recipe for helping a survivor. And you really have to listen. You have to listen to them. You have to listen to anybody else who might be present with them to really understand what are their needs. And trust is key. Because if the survivor does not trust you or trust your organization, then the case or really helping them and bringing their case to justice can't happen. And you're right when you say that there's so many needs. There's like a wide breadth of needs that a survivor may have, and that in turn speaks to multi-stakeholder
Mm,
collaboration and networking. So let's say if a particular organization is entrusted by legislation with the role of helping survivors, then that organization could never be expected to fill all of the particular shoes, but rather maintain networking and connections with NGOs and community-based organizations and other government
mm,
agencies
mm.
so that we can all work together to help the survivor in the best possible way.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And also, maybe circling back a little bit to a point you made near the beginning of our the conversation, all my working life, whether in managing people in social work especially, and so on, I have been an absolute advocate of reflective supervision,
Mhm.
but found that in the real world, as it were, in the front line, often it was ditched just in favor of kind of, casework and operational supervision, because
Mhm.
that's all people found time to do. And people totally forgetting that all the professions that you listed to do with mental health issues, all their tools are between their ears.
Yes.
And therefore, if that's not healthy, then they're not anything like as helpful to the people who are in front of them. So, the business about whether it's just family matters or bereavement or relationship problems or just financial issues or whatever that's diverting people of that particular skill, it really has an impact on how they actually present and how they actually deliver their work. Would you not agree?
I agree 1,010%, Dave, because I've seen it happen
Mm,
to the people I've worked with. I mean, at times I have managed teams of 25 plus professionals, multidisciplinary. And here's the thing. I don't think that helpers are excused from having their own crises and their own tragedy. Because
mm,
at the end of the day, a social worker, a psychologist, um, if you were some sort of monitoring and evaluation specialist on a team, you are not exempt from family members dying,
mm,
from relationships not working
mm,
out,
mm,
from illness setting in, from having a child of your own,
mm,
perhaps with
mm,
a behavioral disorder.
mm,
And the thing that comes up many times is the shame. that hidden shame that, okay, I'm a professional helper. I'm supposed to be helping other people. I'm supposed to have everything together and be 100% functioning every day. And that is a myth. Yeah, because we're human, things happen to us sometimes, and we should be able to say, well, hey, I'm going through something of my own, yeah, and have a proper outlet put in place to be able to
Yeah.
support you so that you can do the helping. And Dave, my perspective on this has been heavily influenced by the writer Brené Brown and her research into vulnerability and shame,
Oh,
because
interesting.
she's a helping professional. She's written quite a few
Well,
books.
listen. That's a
Um,
good point. Let me interrupt you just a second because that's a good place to say this. There will be a front page, if you like, a text to this podcast,
mhm.
and I am inviting you, obviously, to give me any links or suggested anything, events coming up, authors,
Yes,
and so on, that we'll put in there if you feel that that would give extra color to your story.
I can't tell you how many times I have shared Brené Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability and shame with clients and with colleagues. So I'm definitely going to send you that link and to some of my favorite books that she has written.
Okay,
And I have bought copies and shared with friends,
okay.
simply because I feel so deeply, Dave, about just debunking this myth that us as professionals, many times, that we kind of adapt by default, that we're supposed to have it together all the time, and that's not okay. And maybe that thinking keeps us at times from really connecting with our clients because
Surely
our
you're not
clients have
saying
to
that we're
see us.
flawed, are you? You're not surely saying we're flawed. I mean, look, we are. We're partners. We're mothers. We're fathers. We're partners. We're sisters. We're brothers. We're neighbors. We're colleagues. We're dog owners. We're goodness knows what else. I
Mhm.
mean, we got all these hats that we wear anyway, and we're neighbors. And the people who live next door to us that we hopefully get on with, they don't necessarily see us as a professional. They just see us as a neighbor and all the issues that
Mhm.
that involves. I mean, it's just life, and you've got to compartmentalize a bit, and you've got to ask permission that other people will compartmentalize as well, because otherwise it just becomes chaos.
That's right. That's right. And it makes me think of telling you, Dave, about a podcast that I recently developed and recently shared on social media. And
Hmm.
it has to do with my own vulnerability, and thinking hard for some months and deciding, you know what? I want to share this. I think this is something that people may want to hear and take something from it. It's called The Grateful Ache, and it's really stories from my experience of recently becoming a mom.
Okay.
So it's my bit of becoming a mom later on in life. So I have two young daughters. After having so many years of such a rich career, I am now entering this motherhood stage of my life. And as you imagine, it comes with a lot of beauty, but a lot of ache as well.
What, you mean that looking
So
after children sometimes can be difficult? I don't believe that. It's easy, isn't it?
just a smidge, just a tad bit. So the Grateful Lake podcast is,
But
my
I'll publish. Don't you
stories.
worry. I will publicize that. The Grateful Ache podcast. We'll put there.
Yeah,
I mean, listen.
yeah.
Now, look. We're close to having to finish in a few minutes, so I want to
Mm-hmm.
be clear that we've managed to say and talk about everything. I think, to be honest with you, Amanda, I think we're probably not too far from now, probably do another podcast as well, because, you can't just introduce all the subjects and not have a chance to talk about them all. And it's
Okay.
been lovely listening to you anyway. So let me
Thank
ask you
you.
for the last few moments. If you perhaps people listening, let's imagine some young people are listening, thinking about a career, or they maybe already chosen a career, but thinking about how they can kind of link it with the rest of the professional world or the rest of the helping world. What advice would you give to people? Whether it, I don't know, it might be different. Is it regionally or nationally, or it might just be the same message internationally? But what kind of message would you give as to your experience and how much you might encourage people to consider these kind of professions?
Oh my gosh, Dave, I'm so glad you asked that. And I would say find an NGO. If you are a young person and you are pursuing your studies or you are trying to find your career path, I would say find an NGO, give of your time, give of yourself, put in the work, see how you can help, see how you can uplift a community, and that is going to help you 1,000% in finding yourself, finding what is your career path. It's going to help you to figure out, is this for me? Is this not for me? And the wonderful byproduct anyway is that you're gonna be helping. You're gonna be helping to develop your country, develop your community. Is that okay, Dave?
That that sounds marvelous, and I think, to be honest, it better be the last voice on the podcast because of the timing. Listen, Amanda Ackbarali, it's been an absolute delight talking to you and listening to some of your experiences. And like I said, there's plenty more to come. So, as I said, we're hoping now to make this the start of a kind of a Caribbean suite, if you like, of like-minded professionals and people involved in protecting people, protecting the vulnerable, and looking at all sorts of different angles. And I mean, and the next podcast will be, I hope, with Adrian Alexander from Free the Slaves, which is quite a
Oh,
significant
yes.
organization as well in the
Wonderful
region.
guy.
Yeah. So, listen, thank you very much indeed for today. We will talk again. And I just wish you, the Opening Lotus, and anything, and your two delightful daughters, a good day. And we'll speak again very soon.
Thank you so much, Dave. You keep well.
All right. So we'll just stop recording.